David, we've found a beautiful spot just beside this wattle. And look, we've got Canamumbla in the background there. The Burrawa, Mount Burrawa?
Mount Burrawa, yeah. I climb it 3 times a week.
Yeah, look at him. Look at him. He's pushing 100 and he looks much younger. One of the other benefits of holistic management, holistic health management, David.
Yeah.
We drove into this paddock and it's got some interesting history you might want to tell us about.
Sure. These trees in this paddock, this is one of some of the best cropping country on the property, but there was no trees on this area at all, or maybe one. And so the Burrawa Land Care Group had a biodiversity project in, I think, 1997 called Salt Shaker, and we had an objective way of assessing the environmental benefits of projects. So there were things like you got points for a larger area, the amount of biodiversity per kilometre of fence, you got to score for that. The biodiverse nature of what you were doing or protecting. There were a whole lot of objective ways. Bird counts, I think, came into it. So it was quite an innovative project. Anyway, we got involved.
It won some awards.
Yeah, it did.
It did, yeah.
No, it was a good project. Anyway, we got involved, and there was no biodiversity much here except what was growing on the ground, which was, after cropping. And so our attempt to try and reintroduce some more structure into the landscape was to do this project, which is about 10 hectares. It's in the middle of, there are 7 paddocks in this area, and this one is in the middle of them. There's 6 surrounding this, and this one's in the middle. So for a number of years after these trees were direct seeded, and we didn't graze it for a number of years. I'm thinking probably 6 or 7 or maybe even 8 years. So it had no stock in it at all. And it was really, it went through, like a lot of country does when you start managing it this way in a different fashion. It went through a very weedy phase. It had had a fire over it in 2006. Yeah. There was a huge amount of Patterson's curse and things we call weeds. And the temptation always, when you come from a conventional management perspective, is to intervene all the time and to try and stop all the things you don't want and promote the things you do want. Now, the way we think about it, the way we're trained to approach these sort of issues is stop thinking about the things you don't want and concentrate on managing for the things you do want.
Yep.
And so that's an incredibly hard thing to do because we're worried about how it looks, but if you think about it, the natural world isn't tidy. It's got a lot of structure. There are things dying, there are things initiating, there are things mature, and there are things in between. And that's a really healthy thing for the landscape. If you haven't got that, it's what you need more of.
Dynamic.
Yeah, dynamic, yeah. Totally dynamic. It's changing constantly. And in human terms, sometimes we don't realise that it is changing. But in this situation, we thought, well, we're not going to intervene. We're just going to wait until the trees are big enough to handle the stock, and then we'll graze it the way we graze all our paddocks. And over time, we believed, and we've shown it so many times, we're convinced that it's right, that things change and succession takes place based on the rate and the amount of disturbance you create. Grazing is a disturbance. It doesn't necessarily mean digging it all up with the cattle's feet all the time, but if that happens from time to time, it's definitely not a disbenefit. So over a period of time, grass has started to come in. There's quite a lot of cooch in here. I used to spend quite a lot of money trying to get rid of cooch, but actually it's the last plant in the landscape that stops being green in a drought. So, and it's a summer active species. It provides wonderful ground cover, and when it becomes dormant in the winter, other things come up through it. So you'll get plenty of grass other than cooch where you've got cooch. So yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's a great benefit in trusting the process of succession to evolve the community to something more diverse. Now, that's not a static thing, it's dynamic as it's happening, and it's dynamic when it gets to what you think is diverse, because there'll always be disturbances. You'll get a storm, you'll get a fire, you'll have animals that graze too heavily or not enough, and all those things create niches for other things to initiate, and that's what we're really trying to get. And the other benefit is that you know, trees provide nesting sites and roosting sites for birds. You know, we have got increasing numbers of birds on this place. There's a very good graph that somebody's drawn recently looking at the rise in vegetative cover on this property, and the people have been counting birds here for about 20 years, and the two graphs are absolutely in lockstep. So as the vegetation goes up, yeah, the bird species that'll support increase.
The habitat.
Yep. Yeah.
And David, I'm just looking, we're beside a fairly established wattle there. He's, I don't know, 10 metres tall, fairly significant size, 8. At the same time, we've got some little, you know,
little eucalypts.
Little
They
eucalypts.
would have
Can you see
been,
that there?
they would have probably been hammered by cattle when they've been in here over the last couple of years. But one of my friends said to me, you know, you don't have to worry about protecting those things because they're perennials and they keep coming. And I mean, we like to see them not being knocked around by cattle. That's ideal. But if they are, it doesn't stop them living. They keep on coming, and they're perennials, and they've evolved here, so they know how to survive in this climate.
They're used to some degree of grazing, I guess, or browsing.
A little bit from kangaroos.
Yeah, as a species.
Probably the big thing, the biggest disturbance here would have been when Aboriginal people were here, would have been some sort of mosaic burning to keep the landscape open. The woody vegetation in these sort of areas was thought to be about 20% tree cover. So the rest, most of the landscape was grassland and forbs and legumes and little vines and lots of diversity, up to maybe 100 species per hectare. Now in our modern world we've reduced that to sometimes down as low as 10 species. So.
And what's the ground cover, the wooded ground cover in Burra now, just to compare what it was, 20%, what is it, sort of 2, 3, 4% in Burra?
Well, certainly in the Burra catchment, the 180,000 hectares of the Burra catchment, the average woody vegetation cover is 15%.
Yeah, right.
Now on this property it was 3% in 1970, now it's nearly 20%. Some of that we've put there by intervening, but there's also, I think I might have mentioned earlier, there's also quite a lot of places where trees are coming up as volunteers from seed fall from existing trees. That's incredibly exciting, because without that, the trees in the landscape that are scattered are the living dead if they don't have any children. So it's wonderful that they're actually finding it. The conditions and the time of our management from a grazing point of view are enabling plants to germinate and survive.
So as you were saying before, David, just because you're not seeing activity and action and growth and succession and leaps and bounds doesn't mean it's not actually happening.
No, that
Patience.
Yeah, patience and gratitude.
Thinking about the costs you're saving as well by not
Absolutely.
ploughing and carrying on.
Yeah.
Beautiful.